So training for multiple races, how do you do this? There was a question about, if you're doing a half and then a full, or a half and then a 10K. Whenever you're training for multiple races, I really encourage, it's tough to count for every scenario. Like you have Disney Goofy Challenge or Dopey Challenge, where you're running a race every single day, and then some people are running a half 2 weeks apart, or a marathon and a half marathon. So instead of trying to account for every single thing, I'll kind of give you some generalities and some principles to think about if you're going to run multiple races. The first thing is, let's just start off with multiple races in a row. I think you shouldn't be looking, obviously, to PR those. You should be looking to run throughout them, or walk consistently throughout them. So I wouldn't be racing any single race. And I think I would probably, if it's like 5K, 10K, half, and full, I'd take the first 3 races at base pace. And then the last race, I would start base pace and see how I felt. I wouldn't be racing any of those at like 5K, 10K, half pace. And the tough part is an ego check, right? You're going to finish the race, you want to pick it up and run harder, but I would always save it for the last race. If you have races that are in close together, like you have a half one day and then 2 weeks later you have a full, or vice versa, or 4 weeks apart, anything within 4 to 6 weeks, I think if it's a full marathon, anything within 6 weeks, like back-to-back fulls, or halves within 4 weeks, so 4 and 6 weeks time frame. I always encourage people to just choose the race that's more important to them. If it's a half marathon, you can get away with running one kind of hard and the other one racing. But in the full marathon world, if you have a full marathon 4 weeks apart or less, I really encourage you to run base for both of them, because they're both going to be hard even with that. If they're close together and you're like, I'm going to race one of them, I encourage you to pick something up from the outset and stick with it. The trouble is people usually can't contain themselves, and they run the first one really hard and destroy themselves, and then end up in my office for the protocol. But you want to pick and have a plan going into it. As far as like maintenance and how do you handle between races, if you go into the training guide, I talk about the minimum time off. But if you have any race, like if you are, let's classify a race as something you run and you're sore with afterwards, because if you're training for a full marathon and you use a half marathon as part of your training run, not a big deal, because you're going to run 18 miles anyways. I'm talking about hard efforts that are difficult to do, that wear you down, make you sore. I think for a half marathon, you need to pull back for 2 weeks and then go back into your next race. For a marathon, I would say 2 to 3 weeks. It's really pushing it. I would say maybe let's go back. A half marathon can go 7 to 10 days, and then a full marathon 2 to 3 weeks of trying to dial it back if you got sore from that run. So just think about the process of it, and keeping your ego in check. Having the game plan is really important, I find, for these races. Back 5-10 years ago, I'm like, why would anyone want to do that? Just pick one race and kill it, and just train for one race. And more mature Steve realizes that's not everyone's goal, and it's far and farther closer to my goal is to just have fun with things. But just have a plan going into it and give yourself some time in between. The biggest thing for all of you, bar none, is to stay healthy, to stay consistent in your running. Because when you break consistency for long periods of time because of injury or life or whatever it is, that's what I find is the biggest thing that gets people hurt, is that they're running from injury to injury because they're rushing back because they had to catch up for a race for another one. We all had the opportunity to wipe our complete slate clean with COVID-19. So hopefully you use that time if you needed it, but focus on consistency. 80% of runners, upwards of 80% of runners are hurt every year. Plan on 2 weeks in any training plan where you might need to take some time off or adjust. I've never gotten through a full marathon plan without having to take a week or 2 off to make sure I didn't blow up. So don't be afraid of the time off, but what we're really after is not missing 4, 6, 10, 12 weeks of time because we let something fester.